KPBS On Demand is supported by Splatero, helping homeowners pay off debt or for home improvements by offering streamlined access to your home's equity with no additional monthly payments or new debt. Splatero provides a lump sum payment in exchange for a share of your home's future value. Learn more at splatero.com.
Welcome back to another edition of KPBS Cinema Junkie Podcast. I'm Beth Accomando, and I am here at San Diego Comic-Con International. This episode is dedicated to Comic-Con. I've been going for more than 4 decades, and it's my home away from home. And I decided I wanted to share a little bit of what that experience is like. And in order to do that, I decided to interview another fan. Nathan Donovan moved here from New York because he needed to be closer to Comic-Con. I spoke to Nathan before Comic-Con began, and he conveys a little bit of what it's like to go to this pop culture mecca.
I was living in Brooklyn in 2005 and got a call from my grandfather, who was living in San Diego at the time, and asked if I ever heard of this Comic-Con and if I ever wanted to go. And I said, of course, since I was 12 years old. I was 21 at the time. I'm not the type of person that likes planning for stuff, so getting an airfare ticket and finding a place to stay and getting out here every year just seemed like too much work. So I just decided to move out here so I would never miss another one. And 4 months later, I became a San Diego resident. When I came out here, it was just paradise. It was just everybody. It was the Mardi Gras of comic book conventions. I had been to, Wizard World Chicago many years. I'd been to many comic book conventions in New York City. Just none of them compared whatsoever to Comic-Con, and the feeling you got there and just the energy just from everybody around. It's electric and everybody's your friend, and it's just amazing experience, and I don't find that out anywhere else in the world, and that's what draws me to come back every year. Is I just want to have a great time with my friends, and all 130,000 people there are my friends, so it's a great time. When people come into my house, they usually say, "Oh wow, yes, I understand you moved here for Comic-Con completely." By the front door, have a life-size Infinity Gauntlet. I have a Luke Skywalker lightsaber next to a Darth Vader nutcracker, next to an assortment of little R2-D2s. And last but not least, I have a life-size Spider-Man wearing all 13 years of my Comic-Con badges.
Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man.
I am prepping my costumes. I'm making sure my boots are polished, my blasters are loaded. Probably try to do some crunches. Make our costume fit a little bit better. I've always been, first and foremost, a huge Star Wars fan, and Han Solo was my guy. Everybody tells me I look like Mark Hamill, but I feel more in line with Han Solo. I love dressing up as him. Cosplaying, for anybody that's ever thought about it, just do it. It's so much fun. You get invited to so many more things. You can just walk by a door, and if they're having an exclusive party, they invite you in. That's happened many, many times, and it's like Halloween on crack. But yeah, you can get stopped all day long. It's part of the fun, though. Expect that. If you have a good costume, you need to start factoring in how much time it's going to take you to get from one panel to the other, because if you're doing it right, you're going to get stopped. And it's a great feeling.
You're Han Solo.
I used to be.
Plan.
Can't get out that way.
Looks like you managed to cut off our only escape route.
Maybe you'd like it back in your cell, Your Highness.
You cannot plan enough. You're going to have to make sacrifices. There's going to be cool things going on at both, times. Unfortunately, you can't be in 2 places at once. You're going to have to pick which panel is more important. Don't take all the swag. You don't need every single poster. I think that was my big mistake my first year is I try to take home back to New York every single pen, every single t-shirt, every single poster, every single flyer for a sale in a comic book store. I just wanted to take it all home. You don't need it. It's definitely changed. It's more hectic. It's a lot more planned out. When you first came, it was okay, you could buy your tickets at the door. And I think it was 2007, maybe 2006 was the first year that they sold out at the door. And that kind of changed everybody's mentality. And we got to start buying them online. And then the first couple of years that everybody started buying them online, they would come out with a little thermometer to show you how much tickets were left. And you could have like a week or so before you purchased your ticket. Now, to get tickets, you need to have a pool of friends that are waiting at 9 a.m. on the morning that they send that link out, and you have to register to buy tickets 5 months before. And it's not as chill of a process as it used to be of just walking up and, hi, I'd like to go to Comic-Con. Okay, here's your ticket, go on in. It's military-style planning sometimes to get your tickets. And yeah, it's stressful. It's part of the fun now. Wake up early with your friends. You get to click that link right at that time, wait in the virtual waiting room, and everybody constantly texting each other, are you in, are you in? And it adds a fun adrenaline rush to the process now. I haven't become disillusioned with the con. I know a lot of people have. The year I don't get tickets, probably that will happen to me. For somebody that's never been, that never experienced it, it's Coachella or Mardi Gras for nerds. Part of being in line is the fun, it's the camp out, it's the sleepover effect of Comic-Con. And it takes a certain amount of fandom to do that, and you rarely find that just in your everyday life. So having that just concentrated right there in that line, it's great. About 10 people ahead of you and 10 people behind you are going to become best friends for life. You're going to meet some great people that just love the same things as you, and you're going to have great conversations. I think it's a blast, and I love people that do that. The way I sum it up is it's the most important 5 days for me a year.
That was Nathan Donovan talking about his experiences at Comic-Con and why he loves it so much. Next up, I speak with Keithan Jones, who's an independent comics creator. This year, he's not only running a booth inside Comic-Con, but he's also running the Afrofuturism Lounge outside the convention. Keithan gives us an insider's view of what it's like to create your own comic, and he emphasizes why it's important to get a diversity of perspectives within the comic industry. Why don't you introduce yourself to people? You are an independent comics creator, so what does that mean?
Independent comics creator. Well, first, my name's Keithan Jones. I am originally from Memphis, Tennessee, but I was raised here in San Diego, California since the 1980. I've been here for a while. But I've always been able to draw. It's just been a natural talent of mine. But I always tell everyone the day that I realized I wanted to do it professionally was after I saw Star Wars. My dad took me to see that. And that film just kind of turned on the light bulb for me. And so I just delved into figuring out how this stuff was made, comics, films, things of that nature. And fast forward from then, to answer your question, I found myself not really wanting to work on other people's creations. I always just had a strong desire to do my own thing. Although I admired the other stuff I was inspired by, I just wanted to, create my own legacy. So I created Kid Comics, which was about 4 years ago. I created Kid Comics, and the first publication under that brand is my book that I created when I was a kid, called The Power Knights. And I could have just created something new and from my adult stage, but when you get older, I feel you lose a little insight to what turned you on as a kid. So instead of racking my brain and trying to figure out, what would appeal to children today, it's like, well, why don't I just do the stuff I did when I was a kid? The stuff that worked for me back then should work now. That was my philosophy anyway. And so that's the reason I went ahead and created the Power Knights. I dug it out of the dustbin, dusted it, cleaned it off, wrote a story, kind of updated some of the designs and whatnot, and went about the business of writing, drawing, coloring, getting it printed. I created the website, kid-comics.com, and started doing conventions around the states. Been as far as Detroit, San Francisco, trying to get out to New York, a lot of shows here in San Diego. First, I started solo. I was with just me, kid, owner operator for about a year. But I had a gentleman named Chris Ward who just kept knocking on my door. Hey man, I want to be a part of it. I want to be part. I like what you're doing. I want to be a part of Kid. And at first, I resisted him for an entire year. It's like I'm not ready to expand. I'm still trying to figure this out. I'm doing my own thing. And he was just very persistent. So I was like, okay, well, let me see what you have. Let's see what we can do. And then, of course, he brought in one of his other friends, Michael William Turner, and we brought on one other person, Roosevelt Pitt. So now there's 4 of us all together. So I have the book Power Nights. Chris has a book called Vegas Baby. Michael has a book called The Dragonfly, and Roosevelt has a book called Purge. And the 4 of us have been at it for the last 3 years on the independent tip, where we're just pounding it through the different conventions, Facebook, Twitter, posting our work, talking about comics, talking about artists, and just growing our fan base. And it's culminated all the way up to what's going on now with the San Diego Comic-Con, which I've been doing, I think about the last 2 years now. I've been behind the booth versus just being a fan, just being one of the fans walking around the place. Now I'm actually on the other side, and I have a point of view from that aspect, promoting my stuff. So yeah, so being an independent, it's not. I'll say this: it's not easy. There's a lot of times where I question my decision to do this because it's just a real grind. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of long hours, and I think, like I tell everyone, man, if you don't love doing this, it'll break you. Because there's not a lot. I'm not rolling in the dough or anything like that. It's a lot of work. It's very few of us that cross over. What's his name? I can't remember the creator of The Walking Dead.
Oh yeah.
He started as an independent comic book writer himself, and against all odds, look what's happened to him, right? So that's an inspiration for me to keep going. Robert Kirkman.
Yes.
Robert Kirkman. So yeah, he created Walking Dead, and there's some others that are. Tell you the truth, all the biggest shows on TV and film are comic book properties. So it's a big 180 from when I originally started getting into comics. There used to be a sideline thing, comics, that's for geeks, weirdos. But now, over the years, it's because somehow, some way, it's become the main pop culture, So I'm just trying to get in there and make my mark as an independent creator. And also, I want to bring in, one of the things I think that separates me from a lot of what's going on out there is that I'm trying to provide opportunity to minorities as far as creators go, creators of color. So although I'm all encompassing, I really have a focus on giving artists who would otherwise not have an opportunity to display their work, But that's further down the line when I become more established and I can actually start hiring people and backing or being an investor in some other person's or some other artist's project and things of that nature. But it's a stepping stone process. So yeah.
And for you, going to Comic-Con now as a comic book creator, not just as a fan attending, what are the kinds of things that Comic-Con can offer an independent creator? There's
pros and cons to it. I mean, the pros are you're surrounded by all of these powerful people who have all of these connections who could change your life like that. But the con is there's all these people, and they can, there's all these people who could they could change your path, but the chances of you running into these people is slim because it's information overload. It's hard for someone to sit down and have a one-on-one with you, as opposed to when San Diego Comic-Con originally started. It was more intimate. Now because it's gotten so popular, they don't, and it's no fault of their own. These producers and editors really don't have a lot of time to spend with you. So from what I know, they hold portfolio sessions upstairs on the top floor. So, if you're trying to actually work for one of these companies, I suggest trying that path. Just bring your portfolio, make sure that it's geared toward getting a job with that particular company. You don't want to have a portfolio with a lot of different, what's the word? You don't want it to be too diverse, I guess, as far as your talents go. Like, figure out your trade. Like, if you want to be a penciler, make sure your portfolio consists of penciling. If you want to be an inker, make sure your portfolio consists of inking. Same with colorists. Don't make sure it's a focused portfolio, which makes it easier for editors to decide if they can use your talents and where to put you. Because when I originally started showing my stuff, when I think I was 16 years old, I met Frank Miller, the creator of Dark Knight Returns. And he told me that this looks great, Keithan. This looks really good. Problem is, you can't do everything. Because I had samples of inking and penciling and coloring and all of this stuff, right? And he was trying to tell me that comics are basically done by a team. You have someone that writes it, you have someone that inks it, you have someone that colors it, and you have someone that edits it, so on and so forth. So as an independent creator, I'm used to doing all of those things. And that's okay if I stay in that lane, right? But if you want to work for a Marvel Comics or a DC or an Image Comics, for instance, your chances are much better if you take one of those disciplines and just focus on that discipline and master that discipline versus being a jack of all trades. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. No, it does. Well, and also stylistically, you don't want to be drawing stuff that looks like it's for the Powerpuff Girls and be applying to some place that's doing, sword and sorcery kind of adult comics.
Exactly.
So it makes sense.
Yeah, and that's a good point. If you want to work on Spider-Man, for instance, have a portfolio of Spider-Man art, right? That makes sense. Don't go to Marvel with Batman. I don't think they're gonna question your intelligence a little bit. They're like, what? Next, no. So just like any job, just make sure that you make yourself apply yourself that in a way that they can see how they can use you in their coffers.
And when and where did you get to meet Frank Miller? Was that at a convention?
That was at the old San Diego Comic-Con back in the old days, back in the 80s when they were still at the old convention center downtown. And I was kind of heartbroken because I was like, man, I was trying to get a job, and you have to go through that process. You have to get your critiques in there, and you're gonna get knocked around a little bit, but. I did end up getting a job with an independent comic company called Apple Comics. Mm-hmm. And it was an 8-page story for Dracula. They were doing a Dracula book. And that was my first gig. And I didn't have to write it or anything like that. They just needed someone to draw the pages, and that's what I did. And I asked them, hey, now that I'm done drawing the pencils and whatnot, can I ink it also? And they were hesitant at first because that's not how they normally do this. Right. They usually have an inker work over the artist's work, someone who's paid to do that. And so based on my portfolio, they thought I was competent enough to do it, and I went ahead and inked it. The problem was when I turned the pages in, back then, there wasn't any Photoshop. There wasn't the digital printers we have today and all of, the technology we have today, no internet or anything. So I had to mail it into them. And so when they got the pages, I had inked it. I had so much detail in there, so many fine lines and whatnot. They couldn't print the book. They couldn't use my pages because it would have just printed muddy, because of the capabilities back then just weren't what they are now. So yeah, I got paid for the job, but the book wasn't published until years later. So
Did you get that at 16? Or were you
I
older?
got my first gig at 16.
Wow.
Yeah, I got my first job at professional comic book work at 16 years old. Yep. And I actually I have an interesting story. My first exposure doing something like this, like I'm being interviewed by you guys, my actual very first interview was when I was in 6th grade. And that came about because it was Christmas season, and our teacher asked us if you could have anything you wanted for Christmas, what would it be, and explain why. We had to write a paper, right? So I went and about the business of writing about, I wish one of my comics were published. That's all I want, right? So my teacher, she read that, and she happened to know a guy who ran a print shop. So she came back to me and said, hey, would you like to actually try to make this work happen? And I was like, sure, okay. So they had me for, I think it was about a week and a half. They drove me off campus every day to go to this guy's print shop to work on they gave me pencil and paper and whatnot, go ahead and draw my comic. And I ended up doing a Star Wars comic. I created my own sequel to The Empire Strikes Back, because Return of the Jedi had not come out yet. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do my own little in-between sequel. And so that's what I did. And they printed the books up for me. And I didn't know they were going to have a TV crew and all of that stuff in class, because I was super embarrassed. Like, what? Because, my classmates were there, and they had these cameras in there. And the reporter kept asking me why I like to draw and where did my talent come from. And I remember being super embarrassed, and I kept looking down, and the only thing that could come out of my mouth was, I like to draw. I just like to draw. And she kept being persistent. I remember being a little irritated, like, didn't I answer the question? I just like to draw. Can we end this now? So yeah, it was great exposure, but a little embarrassing for me. I wasn't used to it. It was super nerve-wracking. Plus, they had me pass out my books to my classmates. And I was the type of kid, like, I didn't want to overshadow my classmates. I didn't want to feel like, you think you're special or something. I was that type of kid. So, but everybody was really cool and patted me on the back and all that stuff. So that was my first real exposure connected to my talents, back in the day. And little things like that continued to happen for me. So I just felt like I was on some type of path. Felt like, it's part of the reason I created Kid also, is I felt that I owed my younger self that opportunity to realize that dream, because I always wanted to do these comics, and I didn't necessarily understand how to make it happen back then, or if I even could do it. Even into my 20s, it was more of I can work for someone, but I never realized I could actually do it myself. That took years to realize and have the confidence to just feel like maybe I can do this myself. There's nothing really stopping me. And so, but that was a process, because you have a lot of insecurities at that age, and you're still finding yourself and you're experimenting. Because I worked in video games. I did graphic design for many years. I worked on I did some film work as far as like doing storyboard art and I don't know how many logos I've created for folks. There's hundreds of logos and ads and stuff like that. So I just happened to fall into graphic design for the last 20 some years, but never doing anything I wanted to do. It was it was just that work for hire type of stuff. And it was, it was enjoyable work, but it was never anything personal to me. So like I said, about 4 years ago, I was like, you know what? In my free time, I'm always doodling these characters, these power knights. Maybe there's something there. Maybe there's something I should be doing with that, So I just got really focused, talked to myself, got my courage up, and it's like I'm gonna give this a real shot, and take a gamble on myself. And here I am 4 years later. I'm still at it, and so far so good. Just.
Yeah, you said you want to help other minority comic creators. And what's the importance of that in the sense of getting like a new perspective out there, or getting comics that kind of present characters that you're not seeing in the mainstream, and getting creators who you're not seeing as much in the mainstream?
That kind of segues into, like I said, the insecurities I was dealing with, as far as you don't see a lot of superheroes or comic books in general with lead characters that are Black, Asian, Latino. They're usually the side character, right? That was just the norm, And as a kid, you just accept it as the norm. You don't really question it. You're too busy enjoying your Spider-Mans and your Supermans and your Batmans. It's not really a big concern, but at the same time, the older you get and you start experiencing things in real life, you start putting the pieces together, and you start realizing, like, hey, wait a minute, there's no Black lead characters in any of these books, or some books don't have any minorities at all. There are now, but back then it was really apparent, and it's something that you start to. When you grow out of your childhood, you start being more conscious of what's going on around you and what's affecting you personally. So you start going through these different things in your life. So it starts to mold your perspective on the world. I left high school to go to LA to attend Cal Arts right out of high school. So I was 18 when I left here from San Diego to go to college in Los Angeles. And that was between 1990 and 1992, right? 93. And if you know anything about LA in that time frame, that city was going crazy. Like, you had the Rodney King incident, you had OJ, you had the Northridge earthquake, you had the riots, and this stuff was happening boom, boom, back to back to back. And I was in the middle of that. I was literally in the middle of the Northridge earthquake. I was at the epicenter because I lived in Northridge when it happened. When the riots were going on, my cousin, he lives in South Central, and I stayed with him during the summer months. So I was in the middle of that mess. I wasn't actually in the riots when they were happening. I was on campus. But, they wouldn't let us off campus when that was going on. But obviously, the events that led up to the riots, I experienced those things as far as police harassment and stuff like that. I actually experienced those incidents in real time to myself and my friends. So when I see those stories on TV about these incidents that are continuing to this day, I know exactly what happened without them actually giving me all the details. And generally, it's a case of escalation. I tell people, comply as much as you can to what the officer's telling you. And even though you know 100% that you didn't do anything wrong, don't escalate it. Because that's 99% of the time, that's what happens. Even though you know you're right, just for your own personal safety, don't escalate the situation. The problem is, most of these cases are with younger folks, and they don't necessarily have control of themselves at that age, and they don't necessarily understand what's going on. You're very emotional when you're young, right? When you're a teenager, when you're a young adult, everything is emotion, and you want to solve it right then and there. And usually that's not the time to do that. That's why these things happen. And it's unfortunate, it's something that we have to deal with this in society, as far as whether it's racism, whether it's sexism, on down the line. You know, I mean, everyone see what's going on with the Me Too movement. You know, this stuff is not new. It's just now that we live in the internet era, everything's on display at the same time. I mean, I can't imagine being my daughter's age, for instance, and having access to all of the ills of society all at once. Just like, how do I don't understand how these kids navigate this world, like knowing this stuff, you know? Because some of this stuff you shouldn't know about. Because you can't fix everything. You can't solve everyone's problem, you know? You have to live your life. I mean, I'm not saying be a selfish person, but at the same time, you're not Superman. You know, I can't help everyone. I have my own issues to deal with. You know, I have to get through that before I can even think about helping someone else sometimes, you know? So, but I said all that to say that as far as comics go, I want to bring some, I just want to bring my perspective to science fiction or whatever, because I think it's interesting. I think it's unique. I think everyone, I mean, just like I'm interested in other cultures, and, you know, we watch movies like, we watch movies about King Arthur, for instance. We watch movies about samurai. We watch movies about Latino culture and you know, European culture and all that. So it's like, that's the way I look at it. It's like, it's just a cultural experience. It's not about, I'm not into like, oh, I'm going to write a book bashing people who did me wrong, or bashing another race because I don't like them or something like that. That's not how I'm built. To me, it's like, why would you cut yourself off from learning about other cultures? And comic books is a medium to express those thoughts and feelings and experiences. So me, like my book personally, The Power Knights, the book itself, it's a book about choices. So the story, the story is about two philosophies. Without getting too deep into it, the heroes believe even though they have the power to do what they want with this world, they believe everyone should have free will and the liberty to choose their own lifestyle. The villain of the story, if you want to call him a villain, he believes, well, if you have the power to make the world the way you want it to be, and you can force mankind to act the way you want him to act, why not do that? Because he believes mankind is not doing too shabby anyways from his perspective. So that's the conflict of the Power Knight story, right? Even though the protagonist and the antagonist are aliens, they're not from Earth, they come to Earth as Earth represents a blank canvas to them. Like, oh, we can do anything we want to this world and its people. So that's the undertow of the storyline. Like, yes, you can do whatever you want, but does that mean you should? Mm-hmm. You know? And these two boys, these two black kids, an older brother and a younger brother, they're just regular kids. They get caught up between the two feuding sides. And you kind of see the story through their perspective and how it turns their world upside down, and how it causes stress between the two brothers themselves. You see, because they're dealing with the loss of a father. Mm-hmm. The older brother is the legal guardian of his younger brother, but the two of them lost their father. The father died of cancer, and so them being the age that they are, one being a teenager, the other being a young adult. I'm applying some stuff I know, some things I've experienced in my own personal life with my brothers. I'm applying a lot of that to the story through those two characters. So, and I'm trying not to give spoilers. I don't want to give spoilers, but that's the undertow. That's what's going on behind the scenes of the story. And when you read it, I'm hoping that people can latch on to something that they can relate to, you know. And thus the title of the book, The Power Knights, is basically saying the power within, or the power we all have, or, you know, get your power knight on. Get your power on.
Now this year, in addition to working in a booth to promote your own comics, you are doing you were doing something outside of the convention, outside of Comic-Con, to lure people off the campus to kind of do something after the floor closes. And you are going to be running this Afrofuturism Lounge. So to start with, can you explain to people how you define Afrofuturism, and then tell us about the lounge?
Okay. I get that question a lot, and I'm afraid to answer it because, you know, I don't want to get the hate on the internet. Like, that's not Afrofuturism. What is he talking about? No.
Well, what is it to you then?
To me, Afrofuturism is just, you know, I mean, you could just say black people in space. No. It's science fiction with the protagonist being of African descent, basically. I mean, it's stories. It's fantasy. It's fantasy stories based around a black protagonist, as far as I'm concerned. You know, and a lot of what's out there now is usually based on there's some type of cultural significance to it. There's a lot of real life history connected to a lot of the stories. I mean, there's one comes to mind. They have Harriet Tubman. It's Harriet Tubman, yeah. And I can't exactly remember the title of the book, but it's based on her. It's like a science fiction version of her story. You know, there's a popular one called Tuskegee Heirs. The Tuskegee Airmen, their children, or is it 3 generations removed or something like 4 generations removed, have planes that transform into robots, and they're descendants of the Tuskegee Airmen. That's a super cool concept. So that's out there.
Well, probably the thing that most people are familiar with now because of the Marvel film is Black Panther kind of brought that to the forefront.
Black Panther's leading the way for sure. Black Panther was a game changer. I mean, I don't think anyone expected that film to do what it did. You know, a lot of it is, you know, I have to give Marvel a lot of credit for that because they built a platform starting back with Iron Man back in 2008, and they built it to allow Black Panther to have the platform that it has. And then Black Panther took the baton and just went to the moon with it. So, yeah, that was fantastic.
And we've talked about Black Panther before. One of the things you pointed out that I thought was an interesting perspective is that for you as a kid, Black Panther didn't strike you initially as a black superhero because he was African. I mean, it had less. You had less connection to him because he wasn't American.
Yeah, and that's always been the case with me. Like, I like Black Panther, but I would say Luke Cage is probably more a character I can actually. If I needed to, if I actually consider myself relating to one of these characters, it would have to be more of Luke Cage than T'Challa of the Black Panther. And because the Black Panther is I look at him. Like, even within the movie, a lot of people say they related more to Killmonger than just T'Challa, right? Because Killmonger was the African American versus the pure African, right? But I look at T'Challa as I really hate putting people in the box, and I don't like telling people how they should live and who they should be. Like, but you can look at T'Challa as a whole person versus Killmonger as a work in progress, a person that's scarred. He's not. He's not. Obviously, he went off course, you know. But his reasoning is sound as far as where his anger comes from. That's understandable. His methods, not so much. Reasoning, yes. T'Challa is someone who grew up with both parents. Both parents were loving. He's educated. He comes from a well-to-do environment. He's a whole person, you know. So I think for him, like the movie illustrates, he's not understanding necessarily the concerns of the African American who is living through our diaspora. The African American, is a person who has to assimilate into American culture to survive, right? So, whereas we'll take an Asian person or a Latino person, right? Although they're having their own personal issues here in America, they're still intact with their original language. They still have their original countries. They still have their culture intact, and that's very important to how a person is put together, right? It gives you pride, it gives you confidence, it gives you a backbone. You know where you came from, and you can grab from that energy and that knowledge, right, as you grow into an adult, right? The African American doesn't know other than the continent of Africa. I mean, other than that, they don't know what tribe they came from. They don't necessarily know which country in Africa they came from. They don't know their language. They don't even know the type of food that they ate, you know? Like there's Mexican restaurants all through Southern California, right? There's Chinese restaurants, there's Japanese restaurants. You're not gonna find any African restaurants all over the place. You know, I wouldn't know where to begin, you know? So that's part of the, if you want to say lost or confusion that's going on with the black race in America. It's just like, it's always this, who am I? Where am I from? Who are my ancestors? And why am I here? And all this other stuff, you know? So, and you doing all of that, it's like you're downloading all of that on this side of your head, but the other side of your head is trying to get through the day. Like, oh, I got to get a job. I got to get a car. I got to get a house. I got to make sure my boss is happy. I got to make sure my kids are taken care. You know, all the normal stuff that everyone goes through. But you also have this other side that, who am I? What am I? And I don't, you know, and just coming to grips with that. And that's not something that's easily done when you're a child. You know, you usually finally figure it all out and you grow into, like I said, I had to grow into having the confidence to run my own business, you know. Because you have to think about, as an African American, I have to think about the demographics. Well, you know, who's going to buy my book? You know, are people going to be turned off because the lead character is black? You know, concerns I shouldn't really have floating in my head. I should just be doing what I want to do because I enjoy doing it. I shouldn't be worried about race relations and watching my tone and, oh, you know, does that look too pro-black? Is that too offensive to someone? Like, stuff like that, you know, that shouldn't be a concern. You should just do what you love, do what you feel, let the cards fall where they may, you know. So in a sense, I think white Americans, you know, what is it? Caucasians, I guess that's the proper word. White Americans, they have the one thing I think that outside of everyone's normal struggles in life, I think the difference is that they have more of a liberated mind as far as like, I'm going to wake up in the day, go about your day. You're not necessarily worried about being pulled over by the cops, you know, just by walking down the street. I mean, I've been pulled over just walking down the street to work. Silly stuff like that, like, really? You know, so you're not dealing with that. And then then I think it's easier for you to voice your frustration with a police officer or with authority, period. Like, you can do that and not be worried about getting shot or taken down to the ground, things like that. And although it sounds crazy, that's a real thing. That's a real concern, you know, and I know it's real because I lived through it. And I know a lot of people, there's even black people who don't experience it. They see this stuff on TV and they think it's just too crazy that there's no way you weren't doing anything. You were doing something. Like, no, dude, I'm telling you, I was literally walking down the street. You know, I think okay, it was nighttime. What are you doing out here? I was I'm sorry. It's a real thing, so that's, and if it happens, it's okay. If it happens once, fine. You get over it, you keep going, whatever. One bad apple out of the good, right? But if it continues to happen, that's why you have the situation you have now with the police and the communities having friction, right? Because it's a continuous, it's a lifestyle. It's a continuous volcanic situation. Mm-hmm. So it comes down to leadership, really. You just gotta have a leader, whether that's the police commissioner or chief, your local Congress people, all the way up to the governor, all the way up to the president, who can understand that people are people. No one's perfect. Everyone's going to screw up every once in a while. It's a part of growing up, but they should not end up dead because of some, run-in-the-mill situation, like a speeding ticket. Like, how did a speeding ticket turn to this person being dead? That's ridiculous,
So during Comic-Con, what can people expect if they come to the Afrofuturism Lounge? What are they going to be able to see and do and experience?
So back to Comic-Con. Okay, so we came up with Afrofuturism Lounge, which is a few blocks from the convention center, San Diego Comic-Con. I'll be at San Diego Comic-Con during the day hours, which is 9 to 5. I think the doors at the San Diego Comic-Con close at 5. And I'll be at booth 1943. Kid Comics will be there, along with my good buddy who I grew up with, Bobby Rubio, who works at Pixar. And he worked on the blockbuster Incredibles 2 that just came out. He was the storyboard artist. So we realized that not everyone can get into San Diego Comic-Con. It's gotten so large that the tickets sell out like that. So it's almost like winning the lottery at this point. So getting into the San Diego Comic-Con is like winning the lottery now, because it's just so many people trying to get in. And so we decided that, well, let's just create a comic book show, a smaller con, during the week of San Diego Comic-Con in the after hours, so that people have time to get to it and enjoy it along with San Diego Comic-Con, called Afrofuturism Lounge. The only caveat is that it's based on African American comic book writers and artists. So you can go to San Diego Comic-Con and get your smorgasbord of everyone, of all the different artists out there. And then if you want a cultural event, if you want a focused event where you can, if you're interested in African American art or Afrofuturism, this is your show. We're going to have people like David Walker, who currently writes for Marvel Comics. He's worked for DC. He's done work for Lion Forge, so on and so forth. We're going to have John Jennings, and I hope I say his name, Dwayne Duffy. They did the adaptation of The Kindred. We're just going to have a collection of professional African-American writers and artists at the Afrofuturism Lounge. And we're also going to, but it's going to be more of an after party. So it takes place between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. So it takes place after the San Diego Comic-Con's doors close. And we're going to have drinks, light beverage, or snacks. I believe we're going to have snacks. There's going to be music. And there's also a panel which LaWanna Richmond and John Jennings is going to moderate, and it's called Beyond Wakanda. We call it Beyond Wakanda, the panel, because it's going to be a discussion about moving beyond Black Panther, in the sense of Black Panther's owned by Marvel Comics. It's created by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, right? So although we love that film and we love that character, and it's a huge landmark achievement for Marvel and the way African Americans are portrayed in popular media, we would like to move into the realm of owning our own IPs, our own properties, and representing that stuff ourselves. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's what the discussion is about, how to go about doing that. versus just talking about, well, we need to do this for our community, we need to do that for, well, let's talk about how to actually achieve that. You know, let's take what's happened with Black Panther and navigate that for ourselves versus knocking on the door, waiting to get the green light from one of these larger studios over and over again, and then not having it done the way we want. I mean, you can't really complain about someone else's art. That's their art. If you really want it done right, you have to do it yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what the panel's about. And so that's what Afrofuturism Lounge is just basically a way for people, and everyone and anyone's welcome to it. It's free. There's no charge for admission. You come in there. It's a gallery setting. That's at Broker's Art Gallery downtown. It's a gallery setting, kind of like San Diego Comic-Con, but smaller. You go in there. You meet these great artists. You can, chit chat with them. If you have art yourself, you can show it. Bring your portfolios. Show your work. Check out the merchandise that's going to be, that we'll have on the tables for sale. Including T-shirts and comics and posters and all that good stuff. And have a drink while you're at it.
That was Keithan Jones, founder of Kid Comics and creator of the Power Nights. Thanks for listening to this special edition of KPBS Cinema Junkie podcast from Comic-Con. Till our next Film Fix, I'm Beth Accomando, your resident cinema junkie.
KPBS On Demand is supported by Splatero, helping homeowners pay off debt by offering streamlined access to your home's equity with no additional monthly payments or new debt. Splatero provides a lump sum of payment in exchange for a share of your home's future value. Pre-qualification is available at splatero.com.